We've covered a lot of disturbing, distressing subjects here on the Infographic Show. After all of that, we think we deserve a bit of a break. Previously, we covered the most painful things a human can experience: kidney stones, childbirth, broken femurs. Ouch! Well, today we're flipping the script. Life is full of pain, but it's also full of pleasure. Eating an expensive meal, watching a sunset, ranking up in your favorite game. There's so much to enjoy. Today, we're taking a look at some of the most pleasurable things a human can experience. Pain is easy to define. If something hurts, then it hurts. But pleasure is a concept a bit more slippery. Don't make it dirty, we'll be heading there later. For now, it's important that we define how pleasure works and what exactly is happening in the brain when we experience it. Pleasure can be derived from a wide variety of things: pleasant sensory input like tastes, textures, sights, and sounds, artificial chemical changes caused by taking drugs, achieving success in school, athletics or your career, making positive change in your community, and, yes, sex and orgasm. When we talk about pleasure, the name on everyone's lips tends to be dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that operates as part of the brain's reward system, and we experience a rush of it as a result of exposure to pleasurable stimuli. Dopamine also plays a role in sleep, pain processing, learning, and a variety of other vital functions. A lack of dopamine can contribute to depression, as well as a lack of motivation and concentration. But contrary to what many people believe, dopamine is not the only vital ingredient when it comes to pleasure. The neuroscience of pleasure is still up for debate, as it can be extremely subjective and difficult to trace. But what we do know is that there is more to the story than just dopamine. Neuroscientist Dean Burnett broke down the single-minded obsession with dopamine in his essay, "The Fascinating Science of Pleasure Goes Way Beyond Dopamine." He explains that if you were to go solely by the context in which dopamine is mentioned in much of modern culture, you'd be forgiven for concluding that it has just one fundamental, very specific function in the human brain: producing happiness and pleasure. This may be partially true, but it's not the whole truth. Human beings are able to experience pleasure due to the reward pathway within the brain. This is where dopamine comes in, as it's the main neurotransmitter involved in the reward pathway. However, that doesn't mean that the key to experiencing more pleasure and happiness is as simple as increasing your dopamine. For example, the drug that treats Parkinson's, commonly known as levodopa, is a drug that increases the availability of dopamine in the brain. However, taking the drug does not cause an increase in pleasure or happiness, only a decrease in Parkinson's symptoms. As Burnett puts it, you could say that dopamine is to happiness what petrol is to a car. It's an integral part of making it work. But if you were to literally fill your car with petrol to the point where it's leaking out your windows, that wouldn't help anyone. When it comes to experiencing happiness and pleasure, there's a lot more at play in the human brain than just dopamine. There are endorphins, endogenous opioid neuropeptides produced by the central nervous system and the pituitary gland. These chemicals, as well as artificial versions of them found in the opiate class of drug, both stimulate activity in the reward pathway, triggering a euphoric feeling. This doesn't just make someone feel happy, but it also is part of how the body manages or reduces feelings of pain. Another vital hormonal ingredient in the cranial soup that is the experience of pleasure is oxytocin, a neuropeptide sometimes referred to as the love hormone. Oxytocin is released during positive social interactions, as well as during sexual activity or other forms of physical intimacy. Then there's serotonin, the neurotransmitter that a class of antidepressants known as the SSRIs affect the absorption of. Serotonin doesn't necessarily cause pleasure or happiness, though it mostly allows us to better experience the happiness and pleasure that are already occurring naturally. There's also glutamate, a neurotransmitter responsible for activating the reward pathway. One of the other important neurotransmitters is gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, which works to inhibit neural areas involved in experiencing anxiety and stress, such as the amygdala. The parts of the brain that work together to experience pleasure include the orbital frontal cortex, the part of the brain behind the eyeballs, the nucleus accumbens, and the ventral pallidum. All of these ingredients and parts work together, and there's no single golden ticket to maximizing the experience of pleasure when it comes to brain chemistry. And just as there's no single chemical link to the experience of pleasure, there's also not just one kind of pleasure that humans can experience. Dr. Mariana Pogosian of Psychology Today breaks pleasure down into two major categories: hedonic and eudaimonic. Hedonic pleasure is more easily recognizable, often involving immediately pleasant sensory input. This experience of pleasure is broken down by Dr. Pogosian into three stages: wanting, liking, and learning. For example, let's use a piece of gourmet chocolate. In the wanting stage, you might be building up a sense of anticipation around the chocolate. thinking about when you might get to have it and how delicious it'll be. Eventually, the want becomes so strong that you move to the next stage. You'll pull it out of the box, unwrap it, and enjoy the appearance, the smell, and the taste. This is the liking stage. After finishing the chocolate and feeling satisfied with the experience of eating it, you enter the learning stage. The expectation of enjoyment was met, and the cycle of pleasure has ended, leaving you to get on with your day feeling satisfied. Hedonic pleasure is the one most people think about when they think of pleasure. After all, it comes from the same root as hedonism, a philosophy built around the practice of maximizing pleasure. But there is also eudaimonic pleasure, when one participates in activities that engage in community, cause positive change, and in general feel meaningful. These may not be pleasurable in the moment, but cause pleasurable feelings in hindsight, when looking back on the experience and the meaning it held. Though this kind of pleasure is harder to measure, as it doesn't immediately materialize, it still involves the same parts of the brain and travels along the reward pathway. Now that we have a better understanding of what exactly pleasure is, let's get down to business. It's impossible to talk about the most pleasurable things a human can experience without talking about one specific thing. To quote seminal hip-hop duo Salt and Peppa, let's talk about sex. It's how we all got here. It's the drive behind dozens of human behaviors, from speed dating to buying a stranger a drink, and it is the source of what is commonly regarded as the most pleasurable thing a human can experience, the orgasm. Whether with a partner or flying solo, most sources agree that an orgasm or a sexual climax is one of the best feelings out there. Just in case you weren't aware, an orgasm occurs after the stimulation of the genitals, or in some cases other erogenous zones. More on that later. When a person reaches orgasm, they experience a rush of sexual pleasure and a release of tension that can be incredibly intense and can spread throughout the entire body. It is the third stage of the sexual response cycle, coming, no pun intended, after desire or libido and excitement or arousal. During these first two stages, tension builds in the body, which is then released during orgasm. This release is accompanied by muscle contractions, elevated heart rate and breathing, and the release of dopamine and oxytocin. These feel-good chemicals flood the brain as pleasant physical sensations flood the body, combining to make one hell of a good time. There are several types of orgasms that a person can experience. Healthline breaks the sought-after sensation down into 6 types: clitoral, vaginal, anal, blended, erogenous, and convulsing. Clitoral orgasms are, as you might have guessed, caused by the stimulation of the clitoris. The clitoris contains on average 10,281 nerve fibers and is the most sensitive body part found in humans, as well as the easiest way for people with vulvas to achieve orgasm. Vaginal orgasms are thought to be achieved through the stimulation of the G-spot, a spot located along the vaginal wall about 2 inches deep. They're characterized by the pulsation of the vaginal walls. Anal orgasms are usually caused by the stimulation of the prostate and involve the contraction of the muscles in the anal canal and around the anal sphincter. Blended orgasms are regarded as one of the most intensely pleasurable sensations, caused by the simultaneous stimulation of the vagina and clitoris. These often result in full-body tremors. They're similar in nature to convulsing orgasms, which involve the convulsion of the pelvic floor muscles and can be caused by a session of edging or repeatedly getting close to orgasm without going over the edge. As for erogenous orgasms, they're caused by the stimulation of non-genital erogenous zones. These can include the ears, nipples, neck, even the elbows and knees. Kneegasms are a thing for some people. Who knew? Well, the people who can have kneegasms probably knew. As you can probably guess, orgasms are pretty popular. There's a lot that people are willing to put themselves through to chase that bliss, including undergoing medical procedures. Warning, if the idea of needles going into genitals freaks you out, you might want to plug your ears for this next bit. There are 2 injection-based treatments used to supposedly increase sexual pleasure and sensation for people with vaginas: the O-shot and the G-shot. The O-shot, also known as the orgasm shot, takes platelet-rich plasma from a patient's blood, then injects it directly into the clitoris and inside of the vagina. This is intended to improve sensation, arousal, and make it easier to have a vaginal orgasm. The G-shot is similar, but it involves the injection of hyaluronic acid into the G-spot. Ouch! That sounds like a lot of pain to go through for some pleasure. Well, as it turns out, pain and pleasure are very closely linked, and not just in some highly specialized venues with lots of leather furniture. Paul Bloom explored the relationship between pleasure and pain in a 2021 article for Behavioral Scientist. He wrote, "We sometimes play with pain in order to maximize the contrast with future experience. so as to generate future pleasure. We engineer experiences in which the rush associated with the period immediately after the pain's release is powerful enough to outweigh the negative of the original pain. And so the bite of a hot bath is worth it because of the blissful contentment that comes when the temperature is just right, and the mouth burn of hot curry is pleasurable because of the shock of relief when you guzzle down some cool beer. According to laboratory studies conducted at the University of Melbourne and the University of Queensland, experiencing discomfort or pain before being exposed to something pleasurable increases the feelings of pleasure in the test subject. For example, subjects had one of their hands placed into freezing water, a decidedly unpleasant experience that can border on painful. After experiencing that extreme cold, the test subject reported that chocolate tasted better. Context also can inform the relationship between pain and pleasure. Norwegian neuroscientist Siri Leknes and colleagues published the results of a clinical trial entitled "The Importance of Context: When Relative Relief Renders Pain Pleasant." In this study, researchers attempted to measure the difference that context can make when it comes to perceiving pain and pleasure. 16 healthy volunteers were selected and exposed to moderate pain in 2 different contexts, all while their hedonic feelings, skin conductance, and brain activation patterns were measured. The 2 contexts were relative relief and control. In the control context, the worst possible outcome that the test subject could experience was moderate pain. In this case, when the subject experienced that pain, there was a negative hedonic response. But in the other context, the worst possible outcome was intense pain. Therefore, when the subject experienced moderate or mild pain instead, there was a positive hedonic response. This adjustment of context resulted in what the study's abstract called a hedonic flip. Pain became relief because the expectation was that the pain could have been a lot worse. In its own way, pain became pleasant. The experience of this pleasant pain was characterized by increased activity in the reward pathway, as well as in the medial orbital frontal and ventromedial prefrontal cortices. Basically, according to the study, if you expect the worst and something only mildly bad happens, the resulting relief turns that pain into pleasure. But for some individuals, pain itself can be pleasurable. For example, people enjoy food so spicy it makes them cry. Extreme physical exercise puts their body through incredible strain. Tattoos, piercings, and sadomasochism, well, just as pleasure causes the brain to release endorphins, pain does the same thing. You're probably familiar with the concept of a runner's high. Maybe you've experienced it for yourself, the rush of euphoria that hits a little bit into a grueling run. Well, it isn't a product of your imagination. It's backed by scientific studies. Running and other kinds of vigorous exercise release lactic acid, which activates pain receptors in the runner's muscles. You know how fitness instructors are always saying, "Feel the burn"? That's the burn they're talking about. As those pain receptors activate, the muscles start to burn. Then the hippocampus pitches in, triggering the production of endorphins, which bind to the opioid receptors in the brain and stop the pain in its tracks. These endorphins also stimulate the same parts of the brain activated by sex and listening to music. Zarya Gorvet of the BBC compares the ensuing rush of euphoria to the kind of high experienced by someone on morphine or even heroin. This isn't the only drug-like chemical released during painfully intense exercise either. Gorvet writes that taking part in this kind of physical activity causes a spike in another of the body's painkillers, anandamine, also known as the bliss chemical. It binds to the cannabinoid receptors in the brain to block pain signals and induce the warm, fuzzy pleasure emulated by marijuana, which binds to the same receptors. This pursuit of painful but pleasurable experiences is known as benign masochism, or the enjoyment of pain that a person knows will not cause any lasting damage. This can apply to the enjoyment of spicy foods, which is an indulgent unique to human beings, as animals are unable to distinguish between the burning sensation of spicy food and actual physical harm. Another example is the aforementioned sadomasochism. From the Marquis de Sade to 50 Shades of Grey, there's a whole long history of eroticism that blurs the lines between pleasure and pain. Gorvet spoke with a professional sadist by the name of Mistress Alexandra, who weighed in on the subject. We make a difference between good pain and bad pain. Bad pain indicates that something is not right, something we have to pay instant attention to. Then there's good pain, which is enjoyable. For example, when the shoulder starts pulling during bondage. That's potentially unsafe, so we release it. When the pain crosses the line from recreational to damaging, then the masochism ceases to be benign. But enough about sex. We've already established that orgasm is one of the most pleasurable things a human can experience. What are some of the others? As it turns out, eating a good, satisfying meal is one of the most powerful, simple pleasures out there. For example, cheese has been noted to trigger the release of dopamine in the brain, and chocolate is linked to the release of serotonin. Listening to a piece of beautiful music lights up the same parts of the brain connected to sex and food as well. As mentioned before, pleasure can be highly subjective, but there are so many sources of it in the world. With infinite ways to feel good, what are the best? According to Cosmopolitan's 18 best feelings in the world, some of the most pleasant feelings humanity can experience include taking off a bra at the end of a long day, climbing into a freshly made bed with clean, soft sheets, stretching, releasing the tension from your muscles, snuggling a furry, cute animal, triggering a release of dopamine with their fluffy little face, finishing a difficult workout, sitting on the beach and feeling the sand between your toes, sleeping in as long as you want to on a day off, and wrapping up in warm blankets when it's cold outside. Dr. Yvonne K. Fulbright of the Huffington Post put together a list of her own, highlighting the sweetest non-orgasmic pleasures that life has to offer. She lists non-stop laughing, a child's hug, quenching a thirst, sinking into a warm bath after being out in the bitter cold, receiving some unexpected financial help, feeling your partner from head to toe, skin on skin, learning that the person you're in love with loves you too, and accomplishing something huge. Back over at Psychology Today, Dr. Marty Nemko assembled a list of pleasures accumulated from reviewing over 20 lists across the internet and other publications. Infatuation was one, the powerful combination of dopamine and oxytocin mixed with the rush of excitement that accompanies a new crush. Watching a big game was another. The thrill of enjoying a sport, especially when your favorite team wins, was ranked up there as one of the best feelings you can experience. Spending time with a good friend, whether it's going out for a night on the town or just sitting and enjoying each other's company. Travel's another popular pleasure, the joy of getting away from it all and setting foot in a new place. Being productive and accomplishing a goal also provides a sense of deep satisfaction, and that eudaimonic pleasure we talked about earlier. Other pleasurable experiences are derived from art, such as watching a movie or reading a book, getting lost in a fictional world, and allowing a story to sweep you away. Then there are the non-sexual but still physical pleasures, like a lovely deep tissue massage that needs all the stress and tension out of your body. Dr. Nemko also included some of his personal favorite pleasures, which you just might find relatable. For example, the first sip of a cup of coffee in the morning along with a warm, flaky croissant. As Dr. Nemko put it, indeed, the first taste of most things often feels the best. Think of your favorite food or drink. Isn't the first taste the best? Do you savor it enough or too eagerly push on to the rest of it? He also lists the experience of spending time with his dog Einstein. Taking a hike with Einstein as a reward for my having done a few hours good work, few multitaskings can be as rewarding. I get my exercise, Einstein gets his, he gets to relieve himself, I get to appreciate nature, and when I tire of that, I get private, undistracted time to ponder a problem. Another personal pleasure he's included is planting seeds and watching them grow. The word awesome is cheaply tossed around. It should be reserved for activities like watching the miracle of growth. We've looked at the science at the most popular magazines and the personal anecdotes from psychologists, but what do the masses say? Let's take a look at Reddit, where the internet goes to bare its soul, no matter how weird that gets. An Ask Reddit thread from 2021 asked, "What was the greatest pleasure you ever felt?" The responses varied greatly. Many of them have an element that we can all relate to. The moment my sister came home from the hospital, lucid dreaming and flying in said dream, watching people enjoy food I cooked, the shower and bed after camping for 4 days, when school's canceled for the day, and you're half asleep and overhear your mother tell your sister not to wake you up because school's out, hearing "I love you" for the first time unconditionally. There is a lot of pain to experience in this world. It sometimes seems there are endless ways to be hurt, from illness to injury to torture and abuse. But there is also so much joy, so much pleasure. If looking into the most pleasurable things a human can experience has made anything clear, it's this: there are infinite things that can bring pleasure into your life, from enormously meaningful acts of charity or life-changing accomplishments to something as simple as a piece of chocolate or a kiss from the one you love. Pleasure is everywhere. You only have to stop and pay attention. Now check out most painful things a human can experience, or watch this video instead.